So there was once this man who had black and white cattle, and he loved his cattle so much that he treated them like his own children. And every morning he'd go out and he'd milk his black and white cattle, and they would give him white frothy milk. Well, one day he goes out to milk his black and white cattle, and there's no milk. He goes, well, that's weird. The next morning he goes out to milk his black and white cattle again, still no milk. So he moves the cattle to a place where the grass is greener, thinking this will solve the problem. Third morning, he goes out to milk his black and white cattle, no milk. So he says to himself, you know, something is really wrong here. I'm going to stay up all night until I can see what it is. And that's what he did. And in the wee hours of the morning, he saw the most amazing sight. The heavens opened, and down from the heavens came this huge rope. And climbing down the rope were the most amazing women he had ever seen. And they were carrying calabashes. And they took the calabashes and they went over to his black and white cattle and they milked the white frothy milk. Well, the man didn't care about the milk. These women were the most amazing women he'd ever seen. So he ran towards them and he grabbed one. She shrieked, calabashes, milk flying all over the place as the rest of the women scurried up the rope into the heavens. And he held on tight to her. And the tighter he held, the more she fought. The more she fought, the tighter he held until he said, woman, I want to marry you. She stopped fighting. She said, all right, I'll agree to marry you under one condition. Well, what's that? He said. I have this basket that is so exquisitely woven that the lid fits perfectly on the bottom. I'll agree to marry you if you agree not to open the basket until I say so. Is that it? He said. So they were married. And she was a very good wife. And she loved his black and white cattle and treated them as though they were her own children. So one morning, she was out milking the black and white cattle, and he was sitting around the house, and his eyes went up to the top shelf where the basket was, and he goes, we've been married a long time. All of what I have is hers. Surely what is hers is mine. It probably won't do any harm to take a peek in that basket now. So he got up and he took the basket down from the shelf and he put it on his lap. And very carefully, he lifted the lid that fit perfectly on the bottom and he looked inside. He said, I can't believe she's made such a big deal out of this. There's nothing here. He put the lid back on the basket, put the basket back on the shelf. So when his wife came home, she said, so, husband, what have you been doing? And he said, I looked in the basket. Oh, she said, you looked in the basket? Yeah, I can't believe you made such a big deal out of this. You looked in the basket. And what did you see? Nothing. There was nothing there. You looked in the basket and you saw nothing. If only you would have waited, I would have shown you how to see what was in the basket. Now I must take my basket and leave. She left him. And the old Kikuyu storyteller says, mankind still thinks those things of the spirit which cannot be seen are nothing. Now I tell you this story because what happens in the field of eating disorders is that those who struggle with an eating disorder, concerned family member and friends, and sometimes even professionals, they don't understand that it's not simply about what you can see. It's not simply about the food, that there are invisible forces, forces that we can't see with these eyes, that it's driving the disordered eating behavior. And if you're only looking at the number on the scale or the fat on the body or counting how many calories, you're not going to get to those invisible things that are driving the disordered eating. And if you don't get to them, you can't really get to full, complete recovered period. Because eating disorders, they're like a weed. If you just cut them off at the top, given the right circumstances, it's going to come right back. But if you can go down and get the root issues, those that cannot be seen with these eyes, and clear that, it's a done deal. It's done. So that's why we focus so much on getting to those underlying issues, so that you don't have the revolving door situation where somebody can actually go in, get to what's at the root of it, and then be done with it. But unfortunately, so many people think it's just stopping the behaviors, and that's it. And they might try to white knuckle it, or they might try to just distract themselves. And what happens if those real issues aren't resolved, they can get played out someplace else, or the eating disorder can come back.